Hello and welcome to You Call This Yoga. Our usual host, Howie Sheriff, is not in today. He is on an adventure he will be talking about next week, so be sure to tune in then. My name is Celia Hartnett. I'm a yogi, a yoga teacher, a social worker, and a mom, and your host for today. So glad that you are joining us this morning. It is my absolute pleasure this morning to introduce Lisa Clark, who has been studying yoga and practicing yoga and teaching yoga for over 30 years. Lisa is the founder and director of EMBODIYoga, which helps students embrace yoga in a creative and authentic way. She is a 500-hour certified yoga teacher, a somatic movement educator and therapist, and a teacher of body-mind centering, which she has been developing and teaching and training folks in for 30 plus years. She has taught all over the world, and it is my pleasure today for us to be able to share in her wisdom and experience. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. I know you have deep roots in the Triangle, but you're on Skype today in Cincinnati, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you can talk with us about your experience, about EMBODIYoga, and about the different ways you work with people to make yoga accessible to them. Tell us, if you would, how you first became interested in yoga.
I first became interested in yoga in my teens. Actually, I was around 12 or 13 years old. And very middle class upbringing in North Carolina. Wasn't an esoteric environment at all. And I went to the library. I was an avid reader. And for some odd reason, the librarian showed me two books. And one was The Autobiography of a Yogi, which had just come into publication. And the second thing was Gandhi's biography. Now, why she gave me these, I'm not quite sure, maybe from my other reading interests. But I brought these two books home. And for me, it was the first time this whole world got opened up to me. And in my bedroom as a 13-year-old, I just started practicing what I thought they were talking about, which was yoga. I just get on the floor every day. And I thought, oh, this feels so good. Now, this was a time when nobody was teaching yoga. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear about yoga in the United States. This was a long, long time ago. This was a long time ago, more than 40 years ago. And that began my journey. I began practicing, and then I really didn't have my first class until I was about 17 years old. And then I was introduced to it, a weekly class, and the minute that teacher uttered her first words, I was like a fish that found water. I was like, this is it. This was so natural to me.
What a wonderful story. So you had already begun by mastering your home practice.
I guess we could call it that. I was curious about this thing that Gandhi talked about, meditation, nonviolence, communication. His roots of going back to this kind of, self-sufficiency. Like, this intrigued my mind, and I would sit and I would think, this must be meditation, this quiet state from where you would reference from all day long, And I'm going to high school like everybody else and having a life. and then the incredible stories from the autobiography of a yogi, uh,
Mm.
their devotion to practice and the possibilities. So I did what I thought would be yoga, and what I got was the feeling. So that when I met my first official teacher,
Mm-hmm.
who actually lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, um, it matched perfectly. But she taught me the foundations, right?
It sounds as though the foundations of a philosophical and holistic approach to yoga had been established through your reading.
It had, because I didn't have a physical teacher there in my bedroom with me, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, I could find it from inside of me. Nobody was telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
No, do you know what I'm saying? It's very
Yes.
different than standing in front of a teacher who's sculpting your process on the mat to go in and out of the poses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine what these two authors were trying to get at and find this source inside of me, which I believe that I found.
And it sounds as if that informs your work to this day.
It does. And I was very lucky. My first 10 years or more of official
Uh-huh.
uh, taking classes were by teachers who that was their foundation. I mean, whatever happened, I found teachers by accident,
Mm-hmm.
really, who had a very similar philosophy and taught from that point of view.
That sounds wonderful. So tell us who some of your later influences were as you developed your practice.
Mhm. Well, Nancy, my teacher in Greensboro, was a student of Amrit Desai,
Mm-hmm.
Kripalu Yoga.
Right,
And
right.
Kripalu was just starting. Can you imagine? It's such a large foundation now. And I was going up to Boston, Massachusetts, and we all know that Kripalu is housed in Stockbridge, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher sent me up there. She said, "Why don't you go up? They're opening a place called Kripalu. My teacher, Amrit Desai, is there." And I went up, and it was a living ashram at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And Amrit Desai gave darshan. He gave darshan. He pretty much taught every class. I mean, this is how far back that went. And I kept visiting it and kept taking classes there. And eventually I signed up for a yoga teacher training, and he taught almost every class.
Mm-hmm.
So I also had gone to to Massachusetts because I wanted to study with Bainbridge Cohen.
Ah.
And she became the great teacher of my life, truly. I'm still working with her now, all these decades. So between the two of them,
Mm-hmm.
uh, really kind of helped set my beginning foundations in yoga.
And is that how body mind centering yoga became part of your life? Was it during that time?
Well, what was interesting is there was no body mind centering yoga at that time. There was body mind centering.
Uh-huh.
Bonnie Cohen is the founder. At that time, the school was in Amherst, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
So I was spending summers. The program was very long. It was 8 weeks every summer. And I was going up and I was studying with her. Now, that is pure somatic movement.
Mm-hmm.
But my modality was as a mover and a yogi. So I would take everything Bonnie had taught us and I would just go home and practice it every day. I'd go home and put it into my yoga form
Uh-huh.
because that's how it made sense to me. And that's how the whole fusion started to happen. It wasn't until years later I would bring my inquiries to Bonnie and I'd say, "What do you think of this?" But she wasn't into yoga. And so it took a long time. I mean, so I was introduced to Bonnie in early 80s and it took all the way till, oh my goodness, the late 90s till really she came around and said, "Hey, let's get together and try to play with this yoga and BMC. Then that began this interesting cross-pollination. There were more people involved in it than Bonnie and I. There were several BMC, body mind centering students, but that began the inquiry of what eventually became the body mind centering and yoga program um, under the School of Body Mind Centering. Yeah.
So for those who might not know about Bonnie, tell us about her.
Bonnie Bainbridge
Thank you.
Cohen is an incredible somaticist. Um, and she has a background as a dancer, but also she is an OT, an occupational therapist. And her love has been working with children with developmental issues. And she created the work called Body Mind Centering.
Mm-hmm.
The school started in Amherst, Mass, but it now is in California.
And I know that teachers from different disciplines have worked with her. So would her work be an umbrella for all types of movement? Would that be a way to think of it?
That's you said that so beautifully. Yes, so many people come from different walks of life. There's performers and dancers, a lot of therapists.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of therapists come to her, OTs, PTs. I was in a group once where there were 2 postmen who came. I couldn't believe it. Post people, they wanted to learn more about their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists come, other somaticists come. Now a lot of yoga people come to her.
That's fascinating. And I know that you said she is still alive, and I believe she's still doing trainings.
Yes, she doesn't do trainings anymore, but she does workshops.
Uh-huh.
And she just finished a great workshop in California. It just ended 10 days. So she travels quite a lot and teaches workshops, yes.
I'm going to take a moment here to introduce one of the pearls from our usual host, Howie Sheriff, who has taken some of your work and embodied it for us to take a look at this morning. So we have for our viewers a pearl of wisdom, and the purpose of this is for us to see some of what Lisa does, some of how her work in embodiment yoga is designed to come into our lives holistically through asana, but also through the idea of supportive and connectedness to everything around us, our environment and the earth and all the things that we bring to our daily practice. So I hope we have now the Pearl of Wisdom done by Howie Sheriff.
In this Pearl of Wisdom, I'll be doing a chair-based adaptation of Lisa Clark's somatic yoga approach to yoga called Embodiment Yoga. The intention is to have yielding with integrity on a chair that is often difficult. That's why I'll show you using 3 bath towels and 3 hand towels. Some are rolled up and some are folded. Let me show you. I have a very large bath towel, or this could be 2 smaller ones, to go into the nook of the chair. I have another one for me that is very similar, same set, and I just tuck it in over here. So this is for my pelvis and my lower back. I have another towel already rolled up. It's a different size bath towel because I don't have any more this size. And I put that roll over here, and this is where my shoulders are going. My shoulder blades could rest up here, and then this drapes over for the start of the support for my neck. I then have a hand towel rolled up for my neck, and I have a hand towel folded for my forearm. I could then tuck this in on the side. That's why it's good to have a good sized chair. I could rest my forearm on there, let my wrist rest open palm. I can take the rolled up towel, extend my spine, and lay back with cervical support. And if the chair was turned so I was facing you, then I would have the opportunity to possibly rest the crown of my head passively against the wall or not. So try it, see how it feels, and let me know.
Thank you, Howie, for that pearl of wisdom. I'm sure Howie meant to say embody yoga there. And I would like to know, Lisa, what did you see there that embraces embody yoga and what you want to bring to your students?
What I appreciate about what Howie just did is that he worked slowly. He broke it down. He asked people to use props that would meet the body so that the body could have a full experience. I like this very much. This has a lot to do with Embody Yoga.
And so he's using props there. He's using towels. I would imagine that more traditional yoga props are part of how you teach. Tell me about the use of props in Embody Yoga and the goal for students.
So my philosophy is that I want people to feel met. So what in the world does that mean? That means we're all different shapes. We have all sorts of different history in our body tissues. We're all very different when we start our practice. So instead of forcing the body into shapes, what if we shifted that perspective and we were looking for relational aspects between body parts? And the props come in to support the body to give it a feeling of what is possible. One. Number two, to introduce new information. So if we only have our experience within our bodies, if we introduce some new information to the body, these props allow us to shape the body and then remain in it to it, being met, not struggling, not pushing, not forcing, but just feeling absolutely met to come in to get a glimpse of the form. Because asanas are introducing in that way new information to the body. So they're literally repatterning. They're giving new information to the neural pathways, the nervous system of the body. And that can only happen when we go into a state of being met, comfort, and ease, and support. If we go to the edge and try to push that information in, into our bodies, what our body does, it flips into what we know, and nothing new is introduced. So you really got to work on the other side of what we know. It's like sneaking in the back door a little bit. So the body can feel it in that type of state, so it can make a new neural pathway so that you can remember it. Your body can remember it, not here, in the future. So this is how I explain prop usage to my Embody Yoga teachers and students, that we are repatterning the body.
And I want to come back to repatterning, but tell us first about how anatomy and the other systems of the body are taught in Embody Yoga.
What I learned from yoga and from Bainbridge Cohen is that we have many body systems in the body. So let me just name a few, because I find that in yoga we're very muscular, eccentric. I mean, every book is written for yoga about the muscles, and it's a little confounding for me. So we have multiple body systems. We have the bones. They carry the architecture and the form of the body. We have the muscles. We have the ligaments. We have the organ system. We have the endocrine system. We have the fluid system. We have the nervous system. I'm naming quite a few, aren't I?
Mm-hmm.
And so every one of these systems are a pathway of relationship between body parts. In yoga, we use the word alignment a lot. But what in the world are we trying to align? Well, we are aligning much more than muscles. We are aligning many things. And so Embody Yoga explores the subtlety and the range of body systems that give us a much more three-dimensional sense of self.
And so when you talk about repatterning, it sounds as though you believe there was an original pattern that maybe was healthy and holistic that we perhaps as adults have moved away from. Is that getting close to what you mean?
I would say it a different way. I
Sure.
would say we've all had a life that this body has experienced, and we can only do what we know.
Mm-hmm. So repatterning is letting that new information, as you called it, in by relaxing, feeling connected and grounded, and sort of sneaking it in through the physical.
Well, it's always physical. We live in a body. We can never not be physical. So I'm really interested in body intelligence. Very,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's magnificent, the structure that we inhabit. Um, so it's always body-based, and yoga is a body-based practice.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying to you is I never label it good pattern, bad pattern, right? Old pattern. I never do this type of thing, black and white. What I say is we all have a certain amount of information from our life experiences. And when we're doing a yoga practice, which is not just limited to asana, we are introducing new information to our life experience. And when we choose to use props, a chair, a block, a blanket, it's a tool to add the information so the body doesn't have to struggle. So what Howie did on a chair with a towel and everything, well, some people would do it directly sitting on the floor, but they might be struggling, and this might be so hard for their spines. So what he did is he supported the body so that it could relax, not fight and push, but relax into the information, not collapse, but just be met structurally so they could breathe. Move the breath through, feel the information, feel the connections between things. Okay, now the nervous system is picking that up. It's saying, oh, this is a possibility. Let's make a neural pathway. Right? It's so smart.
And so tell me about the study of embryology as part of Embody Yoga.
Embryology, we're looking at, I would say that we spend a time looking at embryology as the beginning of our anatomy because embryology is the study of how the body creates itself to be actually a land creature. So we have certain pathways, movement, nervous system, body pathways, symmetry pathways that are set up in utero, that when we're born, they've set us up for a certain amount of survival, instinct, and patterning that we need to be land creatures as we continue our developmental patterns on land, all the way eventually up possibly to a vertical creature, a vertical human, right? So the embryological studies are fascinating because what they do is they teach us how we formed these multiple body systems. And how they, in utero, you really see how they inter relationships begin between things. And I love it because you see us as a cohesive whole. As in Western anatomy, which I have studied for decades, takes that apart and it gives a hierarchy. and it loses that picture of how things are created, reabsorbed, and reused, and they become something else in that embryological state. So there's very little difference, truly, between fascia, ligament, and periosteum and bone. Yes, we classify each one very separately in their own separate little system, but they were once almost the same thing. And because they interwove, they created the container of our body. And our body has the possibility to move in that way still. We remember that state. I know we're like standing adults now, but our body tissues remember the interuterine states. So they inform our movement, even now, how we perceive the universe and ourselves and our environment.
That's really fascinating. And it sounds as though some of the teaching about anatomy really lets go of the restrictions of time, the restrictions of who we are now without looking at who we have been. That's very, very interesting. How do you help get this information to your students?
We work with a lot of different type of intelligence. So, well, you know, I named my work EMBODIYoga because I really believe that embodiment is the way. But we have to get there. People have to learn how to get into embodiment practices. So the different things that we use, the tools, we use visualization. We use cognitive knowledge. We read books. We look at the information. We look at drawings. But that's still outside of the body, putting it on the body, right? It's a different process. And very slowly we move from this sort of cognitive visualization to something like somatization. And then we move into embodied knowledge, where the body itself tells us. So we're looking at these different aspects of learning, and as Embody Yoga teachers, we use those tools in the classroom with our students.
And what do you find the challenges to be in teaching?
Teaching that way, you mean?
Teaching embodiment yoga, what kind of challenges come up for people who might not have any orientation toward a holistic approach to movement?
Gosh, let's see. You know, we in Embody Yoga, we work developmentally. We really, our work is based on the development from the moment of conception, all the multiple stages, till birth, to crawling, to walking, to standing, to functioning. We're really looking at humanness. To be honest with you, I don't have many people who come to this work and are challenged. If
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't have that anymore. Because I think people right now, I'm finding many people are seeking this information because they've hit the limit on the old yoga information that we're just muscles. And this muscle does this and this does this, and you get in the position and then you hold it, and it's like positional. Well, where's the life force in that? What does that have to do with me? You know, why would I do it? You know, how do I feel this? How do I feel myself? So I find so many people are coming into somatic yoga, body yoga right now because they want it. And I say, if there's any challenge, the challenge is inside themselves to change what they've been told to what they feel. That is the only challenge I see, that it's really within them. And we support them. You know, keep finding it, keep feeling it. And then what is your experience? What do you come together with this?
So a lot of the work that you call this yoga and Howie does is making yoga accessible to folks who don't necessarily fit the norm. They have physical differences, they have pain, they are challenged by movement. Tell me some about how embodiment yoga would work for folks with significant limitations, physical limitations.
Yeah. Well, as a yoga therapist and a somatic therapist, I see all sorts of people.
Mm-hmm.
It introduces new possibilities and information to their body, where before movement or something seemed completely impossible, it is not impossible. We find a way in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it might not look like this other person, but I'm looking for relationships to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship. How have we defined alignment as something called, or an asana? We call it relationships between body parts, or between me and myself and the edges of my body, or me and the earth, or me and space, or me and my breath. Well, that doesn't look like something. That is an experience, a felt
Mm-hmm.
experience. So that allows us to work with anybody. Anyone.
And so my understanding then is what each person does is unique to them, and that's the goal.
I wouldn't say there's a goal. I would just say I believe everyone is unique and everybody can move. Everybody. Everybody can feel connected to self.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can feel connected to earth. These are our birthrights.
Mm-hmm.
So, what if it was as simple as that?
Mm.
As simple as that. And we didn't project that it had to look like I can do 200 asanas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. That's like, for some, yes, that's their reality. For others, it'll look like in this moment, as Howie did, I sit in my chair. I can breathe up and down from head to tail through my body. I feel myself. I feel my breath. I feel my feet on the floor.
Mm.
That that's a game changer. That's a life changer for some people. That's enough. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying it's enough. It doesn't have to be so complex.
Simple and very powerful.
Yeah, it's like simple, it's slow. I feel these things. And the miracle I see, or what I experience, is that once we have that, then we get start to feel, oh, my arms to my ribs to my chest, and oh, my shoulders, they're moving now. They're not frozen. So like we start to feel multiple pathways. That's yoga.
Mm. Well, let's take this moment to pause and look at the next pearl of wisdom that Howie has sent our way.
A Pearl of Wisdom, an adaptation of Lisa Clark's somatic approach to yoga, embodiment yoga. We are perpetually negotiating with gravity. Our responses can vary from collapse to propping to the potential of yielding with integrity. That is a preferred option. This is what we try to foster with proper integrity, whether it be the chair, a yoga mat, standing, side laying. We try to have a nice support to follow the natural shape of the body. With that, I'll invite you to explore how you're positioned. For me, I like to have my feet and knees 2 fists apart. I have a downward slope of my thighs. I invite the palms up, resting on my thighs, or if I have support. I have my lumbar limbo roll, a rolled up bath towel I conveniently have. I can slip it behind me in my lumbar or waist area. I'll scoot forward because it's a passive reference, and then I can let parts of my body, left and right, release as I breathe. Therefore, I'm yielding with integrity. I gain the balance from the earth called levity, which can lift me up physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So try this, see how it feels, and let me know.
Thank you, Howie. I heard him talking about some ideas that I believe are part of embodiment yoga, and he talked about collapsing, propping, and yielding with integrity. Can you tell us some more about those ideas?
Yes. So yielding, what does this word mean? It means actively being met. And in the context that Howie's talking about, one of the first things that I teach my students about is that the earth supports our weight, that our body's engaging with this support. So we don't have to pull ourselves away from the ground. We don't have to collapse into the ground. That's a state where we don't understand that the ground, actually, we can rest the body into the earth. The body and the earth have to do that, because we're always engaging with gravity and levity in our bodies. So the first thing is, how do we meet the earth? How does the earth support us? That immediately starts to take some tension out of the body. The little holding patterns when we kind of pull up from the ground or hold. Oh, something's got me. Something's got my support. I can just kind of drop into the ground. Okay, so that's one. Once we feel that, we have a surface that we can actually push into to rebound out of. So this is this kind of soft rebound, but we're always balancing between those two things. You know, like it or not, as human beings, we are dealing with gravity, the gravitational force that takes us down into the earth and the force that rebounds us out. And we need to understand these forces to stand, to walk, to sit, but it's very important in asana practice, or we fixate and hold in our practice, which we don't want to do. We want to feel this life force going through all the cells of our body all the time.
And so I think we've all heard of gravity, and levity sounds like it's much more enjoyable cousin. Tell us some about levity in yoga practice.
Levity is how we bond with space. Okay? Gravity is how we go down into the earth. And I'm going to say something. Gravity is as enjoyable as levity. And as yogis, I find we're pretty addicted to levity. But we have a levity that's not based with the gravity underneath it, the gravitational pull down. Most times, I find, and I teach a lot of people, they don't get the downward support to rebound out of to get the levity. So levity is how we really bond with space or ether. Now, they're both, to be honest, scientifically, they're both a form of gravity. Proven. Gravitational force that sucks us to the middle of the earth, and there's one that pulls us out to the stars. If we didn't have the downward, we'd fly off the face of the planet, basically. And so both of them are important in a practice, but every asana will have a little more load to the earth or a little more load to space. They're all very, very different, and they give us time to create balanced tone in the body. When you feel those forces working with your practice or sitting in a chair, it allows you to balance your structure with those forces, so it doesn't suck you down and it doesn't pull you away from the ground.
So it's very much both and, the way so many things are, not oppositional, but both and. We need them both.
Oh boy, do we need them both.
Now, I mentioned you had deep roots in the triangle. Tell us about your upcoming time here and what you will be doing.
So I just relocated my home to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is where I'm from. I was from here. So I just moved back not even a month ago. And we have 2 upcoming programs that are starting at Evolve Movement in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have a 200-hour program under the direction of Embody Yoga teacher Julie Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
I will be coming in a couple times during that program to meet the students and to teach them. Otherwise, Julie will be the main teacher of that program, and that's beginning in September 2017. The other program we have starting is a new program, which is called Return to Self, looking at yoga therapeutics through the lens of what we call restorative yoga. So we will learn a lot about prop usage, and we will focus on a lot about the organs and the structure, and the organs as a healing system within the body. That also starts in September, and that will only be 4 weekends. We'll do that in series, but series 1 starts this September.
They both sound wonderful. And Julie Snyder, a friend of the show, she's been a part of You Call This Yoga and has worked with Howie extensively in some of his rehabilitative work for his body. So those sound great, and welcome back to the Triangle. So glad that you're going to be right in Chapel Hill.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be back home.
I know that you've traveled throughout the world teaching and training, and I'm curious about what some of your experiences were like in cultures that were so different than the United States.
Oh, Celia, that's a great question. Well, I believe that culture and history forms us. Mm-hmm. It does form us. And yoga in the United States is very different than in Europe, than in Asia, than in South America. We are very, as I said before, we're very athletic, muscular, eccentric, exercise eccentric in the United States, and it has really changed the language of yoga here. I don't find that in Europe, and I don't find it in China. I don't find that in Japan, the other countries I teach in quite a lot. But what I find is an incredible enthusiasm for yoga all over the world at this point. People just really wanting to learn.
I'm curious about you're talking about culture, and in some of what I've read about embodiment yoga, you're looking at yoga and movement as being influenced by culture, being influenced by our environment, the world around us, and going in the opposite direction down to the cellular level. And you talk about how these things can result in a shift in consciousness. Can you talk some more about the shift in consciousness that you see happening in people who practice Embody yoga?
Yes. First, let me define consciousness for me. Consciousness is just choice. Yeah. And if we go back to the conversation we had earlier, where yoga is about introducing the body to more information, more choices, more possibilities, or even coming to peace with what is. Mm-hmm. So consciousness for me is the ability to have more choice so that you can choose. It's in a more awakened state. Mm-hmm. But you understand that awakened state is in my body. And that awakened state brings more of me available to make choices in my everyday life. So if we're studying the subtlety of many body systems, if we're studying the developmental aspects of how we grew, how our movement intelligence grew, and how we can increase our movement intelligence, well, this is how we create more cellular consciousness through the practice of embodied yoga. You can see it's not the emphasis is not I can do 100 sun salutations. Mm-hmm. or I'm really interested in losing 50 pounds. It's not our emphasis, you know. Um, we're very interested in like a multi-dimensional, how do I function in this lifetime? How do I become more available to me, to
Mm-hmm.
my family, to my friends, to my children? How do I do that? It's very relational.
Mm-hmm.
We're built for relationship. I've
Mm-hmm.
more decades I practice. So for me, yoga is about becoming more human. It's not about escaping to an ice cave in the Himalayas like Shiva did and just sitting in trance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite functional at this point in time in our history. We need people to be present. We need people to be awake to what is going on around us so we can make good choices for the future and for now.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is what has drastically changed about yoga. It's a practice for every day. It keeps us awake to ourselves and to other people. It keeps us functional.
That sounds wonderful, Lisa. And we're going to take a moment to digest that by listening to words from one of our sponsors.
You can believe there will be yoga at Sola. Back patio donation class to kick off this wonderful edition. Support You Call This Yoga's mission to help the physically challenged and underserved improve their life with yoga and enjoy this wonderful space in Sola's backyard, freshly washed by a nice thunderstorm. See how it may just wrap around, provide lots of shade or sun when we practice on August 11th from 7 to 8 p.m. at Sola's, Lead Mine and Sawmill Roads in Raleigh to support the nonprofit You Call This Yoga. Come on inside afterwards. There'll be live music too.
Next week with Howie. Okay. Um, Lisa, I'm curious too about your teaching for students who want to become yoga teachers. What, if any, preparation would they need to have to start studying Embody Yoga?
Hmm. I suggest that somebody start a yoga practice. If possible, taking yoga classes, at least 6 months,
Mhm.
where you get a taste of it. You really feel it. And then it's okay to go ahead and apply for the 200-hour program because I feel that you've gotten your feet wet and then you get to learn you because in the 200-hour program we learn about 100 poses. We learn all the 8 limbs of yoga, so it's a great way to start your adventure in yoga, or it's a great way if you've been practicing for years to add a more depth to your knowledge. So I have different levels of students in the 200-hour. We also have a 300-hour program, and I forgot to mention that that will begin at Evolve Movement in Raleigh in fall of 2018, September. And those dates will go up on their website in the next month or so. And anybody who comes into that program needs to already have had a 200-hour program underneath them.
Mm-hmm. You talked some about the many systems of the body, and I was really fascinated by that. And you mentioned the organ system and how Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen would teach about movement using the organ systems. Can you tell us some about that? It's such a fascinating idea.
Yeah, well, often we've been taught that we move from the outside and we don't really think about what's moving inside in response to that. So she really shifted the lens. She said, okay, what if we initiate movement from the organs? People said first, they'd say, oh, that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen. The organs can't move. Well, they can. And when they move, first of all, their movement vocabulary is very different from a bone or a muscle moving. So first you have to familiarize yourself with what is the difference between an organ initiating a movement and a bone organizing a movement, or a muscle and bones moving us. But what happens is when we shift the lens, when the organs initiate, the contents of our body initiate the movement, well, the outer structure, the container, will follow. And the thing that we discover in embryology is that the organs develop before the skeletal muscular does. The skeletal muscular forms around the contents of the body. So when the contents of the body initiates the movement, you have a much slower, deep, three-dimensional, you don't get ahead of yourself. You stay really present when you're in the organ system. And your movement has a different type of depth and satisfaction to it. So the arms, just for an example, all the arm movements we make in yoga are supported, can be supported by the lungs and the heart, the thoracic diaphragm. The movements we make in yoga in the lower body can be initiated by the pelvic organs or the abdominal organs that give us a deeper, longer sense of the legs connected to the earth. And it sounds like a wild concept to say to somebody, we're going to align from the organs. People have never heard this type of language. They heard, we're going to align the quadriceps, or we're going to align we've heard this other language, we're really familiar with it. Well, why can't we use the organs to align our central axis, or our right-left symmetry through the lungs and the arms, or the large intestines into the pelvis, side-to-side symmetry? They have a lot to do with it, because if the organs go out of integrity, they'll pull structure off, and we do see these things in scoliosis. We do see these things in structural imbalances that begin in the contents and show up in the container.
How wonderful that yoga students in the Triangle will be able to study yoga from these various systems and their fascinating perspectives. I'm looking forward to that. Let's take a moment to look at Howie's last pearl and his embodiment of your work.
A Pearl of Wisdom as adapted from Lisa Clark's somatic approach to yoga, embodiment yoga. The concept of yielding with integrity has been touched on, and whether you're reclining or laying back or side lying, you have that opportunity to release. Any place that touches the earth, or in my case the chair as an extension of the earth, is an opportunity to release. We would also like to bond with gravity. And an easy, sometimes, approach to that can be considering the idea that there's a plane down the center of our body and there's a left side and a right side, and that you have the potential of breathing and focusing on segments of your body slowly to allow the bones to get heavy, the muscles to soften, and the joints, which may seem tight, can be breathable as you breathe. Please attempt to find your release with integrity, yielding with support as your body may need, and then try this, see how it feels, and let us know.
Thank you, Howie. Looking forward to your return next week and tales of your adventures. Lisa, how else can people interested in Embody Yoga access you and the wonderful teachings that you've brought to us today?
I suggest that people go to my website, and I have put out a series. If you go to the blog, I put out a series of blog and podcasts all throughout the year, and currently on there's a whole blog series and pod series where people can just take a class with me. They're 20 minutes long, they're 30 minutes long, and you can just enjoy. This first podcast series is called Bonding with the Earth, just learning how to find the support of the earth underneath our bodies. It's wonderful. The class builds on each other. So I suggest people go there. Should I give you my website? Should I just put it here on the air? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's www.EMBODYogaLisaClark.com. And I'm going to spell it for you.
Sure.
www, it's capital E, and then EMBODIYOGA, LisaClark.com.
That sounds wonderful. And it certainly sounds like you're using social media, to which I'm fairly new, to be able to spread the information and wisdom that you have to offer. So I'm very glad to hear about that opportunity, and that would be available to anyone who wanted to take a look.
Anyone, and they're free. And, I teach a lot of workshops and trainings, but I started the podcast series because I realized some people will never be able to come to a training or a workshop. So what would it be like to have it in your own home? And so please go and enjoy them. I put them out there for everyone to start their embodiment practice or to continue their embodiment practice.
Thank you for that. What a gift. And I'm curious, are there any favorite books or absolutely must-reads that you recommend for starting or ongoing yoga students?
Oh, my goodness. Gosh, let's see. There's so many wonderful books. Well, I would recommend reading about body-mind centering. How about that? Wisdom of the Body Moving is a beautiful book that talks about the body systems and developmental movement. So it's a very good place to start. It's by Linda Hartley, Wisdom of the Body Moving. Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen has put out one book, and it's an introduction to body-mind centering. Now, Bonnie Cohen also has put out a wonderful series of DVDs on different subjects that she teaches, different body systems, different classes, and you can buy those online from Bonnie, and they are well worth it. Then you kind of just watch a little piece, learn from her. She has lots of YouTube videos up also, so you can see many classes with her. I think those are two of my most favorite books right now. And you're like, are those yoga books? Well, they're not, quote, yoga books, but they tell me a lot about yoga, a lot about movement in yoga.
You certainly have expanded our consciousness about the breadth and the depth of yoga and movement. And for that, I thank you. I appreciate your spending your time with us and being on the program today. And once again, I want to welcome you back to the Triangle. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to get to know you further. So thank you so much, Lisa.
Well, I thank you and I thank Howie for the opportunity. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.